Agree more. So we have a whole bunch of questions for you, and we're just going to start peppering right in with you. But first of all, I just want to say playing in the NHL is always such an honor. But for someone like yourself that accomplished so much and did so on a first basis, I mean, I just want to say congratulations to you, first of all, on an amazing career. And I'm sure you've already heard it a few times, especially at your Hall of Fame induction. But just congratulations. You have been an absolute pleasure to watch in this league. And for all the young kids growing up who watched you in those 80s and 90s to grow up and do what they're doing now based on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the younger generation's been able to accomplish and really with your inspiration.
Well, I don't know how much inspiration I caused, but you know what? I feel pretty fortunate to have played in the National Hockey League. And yeah, I get to play with probably 5 of the best players in the world. So lucky guy, I get to play in my hometown, which is always cool. Most kids dream of playing in the NHL. I was no different. And the fact that I got to do it at home in front of friends, family, I mean, that's kind of the kicker of everything that made it that much more special.
That's awesome. So when you talk about, playing for your hometown and everything like that, I guess one of the first questions that I have for you is, what really got you into hockey? And then followed up, I think every person that has a child in hockey or anything, why goalie? So kind of what led to you into hockey and then why goalie?
Well, my dad played a little bit of hockey. So as a kid, I got a chance to watch him a little bit. And then all my friends I grew up with played. So I got that opportunity. I was probably 4 years old at that time. And the equipment looked kind of cool and nobody else wanted to be a goalie. So I saw it as a fact. I got to play the whole game, didn't have to change lines with anybody. And I missed the memo where you get to freeze your feet every day, but the equipment was still cool. And I took a shining to it right away where I actually enjoyed it. And apparently still haven't got that out of my system yet.
Now, did you ever experience play defenseman or forward at all? Or did you just start off as a goalie and just stick with it?
Day one, I started as a goalie right up until I replaced the knee about 5 years ago. And that's when I finally stopped playing goal. So
wow.
For a few years, but yeah, no, I'm a goalie at heart. Always will be, always have been.
That's awesome.
It really is awesome. That good synchronicity there. That was wonderful. So you say you only hung them up officially about 5 years ago. So, I mean, you must have enjoyed the alumni circuit and getting to play in all the different charity games and this, that, and the other thing up until obviously the knees as we all know.
But you know what? I only played once a year. Wayne would have his fantasy camp. So I dragged the gear out of retirement and go play in that every year. And then he stopped doing it here about, probably 3 years ago now. The last couple of years I just coach because apparently I'm getting old and the body doesn't like me anymore. So, but now and I keep hearing rumors they're going to have an outdoor game again back in Edmonton. So you never know. We might have to blow the dust off for 5 minutes anyway.
Nothing better than that.
Nothing at all. So obviously then you were still in touch with Wayne throughout these years and just keeping in touch with, I imagine, a lot of the old teammates. Or have there been anybody that you would have liked to have kept in touch with that maybe just didn't work out that way?
You know what? We're pretty fortunate. We've got a pretty close-knit group of guys. I mean, when we were all brought in as 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, it was more like a family than a team. And we were taught that that's how it had to be if you were going to be successful. And yeah, the guys have all stayed pretty close. I mean, you'd love to see the guys all the time, but you can't do that. So when we do get together, it's literally like nothing stopped. You guys pick up conversations where they left off and it's still one big happy family.
That's awesome. Now, this question I've been dying to ask you, just because when you look at the current sports market and how it works in professional sports, there seems to be this idea of, back in the older days, it was you were drafted by this organization. They took a chance on you. There was a little bit of loyalty. Obviously, when Wayne gets traded from Edmonton, was there ever any internal discussions by, the better players or the star players about ever, hey, maybe we should try to get the band back together? Did that ever cross your guys' mind at all?
No, I mean, yeah, it's a job. And unfortunately, guys get traded. And I think it shocked us all when Wayne got traded. But at the same time, you're there to win. And that was the one thing in Edmonton is team was always ahead of anybody that was an individual. And that's kind of how it had to be. And we all understood that and realized that. So it was still about the team.
Awesome. And I do think it goes hand in hand with, NBA players, NFL players, they kind of do the whole super team thing. And I think now for the first time, we talked in our last podcast, how amazing it is that, really for the first time ever, you're seeing some NHL players at the younger level, say, okay, I want to get traded to this team. Whereas I think it's a little bit different when it's a Ray Bork, hey, can you please try to get me on a good team for my last go around? So it's kind of funny that this is so Wayne got traded in what year was it?
Wayne left in give or take 89, 90.
89, 90. So now we're talking about, roughly 30 years later, and the NHL still has that same type of culture for the most part.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah. But I mean, I still think the older players that come at the old school thinking is it's not about individual. It's about team. If you win it as a team, everybody succeeds. And you hate to say it, but some of the new athletes forget that, where they're more worried about having good numbers and looking after themselves than they are being a better part of the team. So I'm still the old school version where if the team wins, everybody wins.
Oh, absolutely. And, as a coach, and Ben can, attest to it as well as Chigs, we try to get that into the player's mind at a young age, that it's not about the name on the back. It's always about the crest on the front of the jersey. You win as a team, you lose as a team. That's what it's always going to be about.
It's true. I mean, the last year I coached minor hockey, I had a group of Bantam AAAs. And that's the first thing we told them is, I really don't care what your stats look like. I know you're trying to advance to the next level, but if the team wins, you'll succeed, you'll advance. If you're an individual and we lose, guess what? You're going to get lost in the shuffle. Mm-hmm. So it's what can you do for the team to make the team better? And that's what people are going to look for.
And that attitude has almost been lost in a whole generation of players somehow. And you find that the ones that find their way through are the ones that took that very lesson to heart. And Grant, that's got to warm the heart a little bit to see that still happens, but just not as much as it should. You would hope that after, like you said, 30 years, these lessons would be a little bit easier to come by.
They would. And part of that's some of the parents, because they see the big contracts guys are signing, and it's about pushing their kid down the line instead of, okay, if he's a great teammate, he forces that team to be better. Everybody wins. Yeah, you're still going to be the star, but now you're a guy that's forcing everybody around you to play better. So it's an old school way of thinking, but it still fits in today's sport.
That's it. And while we're on that subject, I mean, how is your experience with the ravenous hockey parents in Canada? I mean, we have our own misconceptions and truths here in the States as well, but I'm sure it was very close. And we talk about that on this show very often, that it's absurd for parents to think that each and every youth game they go to, that's the one where they're going to get seen by the scout. And that's the one where they're going to commit to that $12 million contract right then and there at age 6.
Well, I found it entertaining. How's that? Whereas we were coaching, we had an open door policy. So if the parents wanted to come in and have a conversation, we could have a conversation. And I found what a lot of the parents looked at the end result and not the process to get to the end result. And I think that was probably the biggest thing that surprised me, is they didn't understand that there's a process. There's a lot of different layers to that process. All they could see was that end result, and they were going to do anything to push their kid to that result. And you see kids that 13, 14 years old that are getting burnt out because they want them to play 12 months of the year and not take a break. Well, better rounded kids play different sports. You got to take a break, give your mind a little bit of a break. So, I mean, that's the unfortunate part, is you see a lot of parents maybe pushing their kids over the edge. And the kids are good and they're talented. They just need to want to play, not have to play.
Couldn't agree more. And I mean, it's almost like the parents don't, one thing we always say is let the kids develop at their own pace. Some kids are going to be late bloomers. Some kids are going to be studs at a young age and then just pan out as they get older. But I don't think parents want to deal with that. I feel like they always look at, my kid has to be on the elite team. He's got to be on the premier team. If they're not on that top team, they're never going to get seen for college or anything like that. Like, I just don't think parents understand. Just let the kid develop on their own and have fun.
You got to enjoy the game.
Exactly.
I mean, if you're pushing him and he's not enjoying it, guess what? He's not going to make it. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much that simple. But a lot of times I think they see the big prize at the end of the rainbow. They forget there's a process to it, and the kids have to enjoy the process. That's the thing that I think gets lost in the shuffle. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of kids that are dropping out of the game, is they lose the love of the game and they lose the fun and enjoyment there is in the game.
Well, and that kind of goes into, so I always tell some stories on the podcast of just parents that approach us at the rink. And there is a parent of an 8-year-old. He's going to be 9 this year. And I did not know that they were being serious when they asked me this question, but they said his dream at 8 years old right now is to play Division III college hockey. And I just kind of looked at them and I laughed, and they were like, no, we're being serious. And I think that this goes hand in hand with what you're talking about. What's wrong with your son coming to the rink, having a smile on his face, finding a good program with good skills where they have fun and everybody is just building that good culture and environment? And, some of these parents, I just don't think get it,
No.
and how hard it is to get to that point. Like college hockey is, even if it's D3, it's pretty hard to get there, or junior hockey.
People don't understand how many kids don't get there. And the fact that a kid likes to come to the rink, wants to play, let him play, let him enjoy it. You don't know why put a cap on where his potential is. You're looking at D3. If he's enjoying it and having fun with it, he could be a D1 prospect. So why limit it? Why set a goal when you're 8 years old and you can progress just by the love and enjoyment of the game?
Mm-hmm. And go ahead, Benny.
I was just going to say, why do that when you can have your parent live vicariously through you and just, have all their fun right up front and then burn you out by, when Clance says by 16, it's like, well, done with this. How's baseball looking?
And that happens to a lot of kids where they just finally said, I've had enough, and they don't want to be there anymore. I mean, I was lucky. My dad enjoyed the game, but never pushed. If I wanted to play, I could play. If I didn't want to play, didn't have to play. So it was my love of the game that pushed me all the way along.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And
yeah,
you talked about your dad. Sorry, Clarence, I didn't interrupt you. You talked about your dad there. What influence did he help play in your career overall, and up until his sudden passing? Unfortunately, I mean, obviously, must have been a huge factor in your life.
Oh, definitely. I mean, my parents were ultra supportive. If I wanted to be at the rink 7 days a week, they let me be at the rink 7 days a week. Did I get pushed to keep up with schoolwork and such? Yeah, I did. And I was a horrible student because I was a student of hockey. But at the same time, they would let me play as much as I wanted to play. I mean, I had times where I was playing hockey, baseball, and football at the same time. So I did that, but they still pushed me probably harder on the schoolwork than they did the sport. They knew I loved the sport and I was going to play it anyway. Schoolwork, well, I probably wasn't the greatest of students, but that's where they were good about giving me a little shove.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, coaching at the high school level, I always tell the kids, you are a student athlete. You are a student first. You want to play hockey, you have to have good grades to do it. Being an athlete and playing for your high school or your college, that's a privilege. You're there to get your education. And again, just being an athlete is the benefit of it.
It's true. And you're there to grow to be a better person. The game's kind of a bonus, but you're there to be a better person and learn how to be a good person. And part of that's good grades. Part of that's learning how to interact with people, respect for people. So it's all part of the process.
Awesome. And now when we look back at your career, you had talked about, I believe you were a goalie coach for the Phoenix Coyotes for a little bit before you retired and everything. So when you look at the talent difference from the 80s and the 90s till today, how much of a jump in your opinion is it? Or is it a completely different game? Like what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think the goalies now are better athletes. I think that's the biggest thing that I've noticed. I mean, the goalies, there's some good goalies in the 80s. It's just, we weren't that big. I mean, all the goalies now are 6'3" to 6'7". So in that sense, plus we dragged around equipment that was probably 30 pounds heavier. So it's going to be a little different style, a little different read of the game. I mean, I went through a transition where it was wide open hockey into a tight checking game of hockey. The 90s goalies saw tight checking going back to wide open. So what you're seeing now is a transition between the two. And as they eliminate the hooking, the holding, it's going to become a more offensive game where goalies are going to have to go back to reading and reacting again. I think the guys that can't read the game, you're starting to see more and more goals going in because they can't react to the game.
That's amazing. And when you think about it too, we were prepping for everything, but I can't believe we missed this question to ask him. How was it having Andy Moog as your backup? Because Andy Moog was kind of a cult hero for when I was growing up. It was Andy Moog and Reggie Lemlin. Those were the staples of Boston Bruins hockey in the early 90s.
It was awesome having Andy. I mean, the great thing about having Andy is Andy's as good as I am. I mean, that was the beauty of it, is we had to be good every day in practice just to have a chance to play in the game. And without Andy, I would have never been as good as I was. I think that was the beauty of it, is having him as a partner, one great partner, two better friend. So that was the fun part, is we pushed each other, but we were also about the team. So it was supportive, but it was also competitive and fun.
That's awesome. And when you think of your favorite teammates like that, obviously a goaltending duo, you're not going to get anything better, peas in a pod essentially. But who are some of your other real close locker room favorites?
Goalie wise
or player day to day? I mean, you played with a whole bunch of Hall of Famers and a whole bunch of folks. So, I mean, who really got along with you well?
You know what the best part is? I get along with pretty much everybody I played with. I mean, that's the best thing I got out of all the game, is I've probably got 100 close friends. And you can call any one of them on any given day and have a conversation. I think that's the beauty of the game, is the guys were all close, and all the teams I played on, we had great guys. And they all understood that, yeah, you're a player, but at the same time, you're a teammate and you're part of a family. And that was the beauty of it.
That's awesome. And if you could speak to Dustin, this one off way back, the Victoria Cougars. Tell me a little bit about your playing days there.
Well, I wandered out there as, 16-year-old. So I left home at 16 to go play junior hockey. And it was one of those, I got invited out there. I went out to camp my first year as a 15-year-old just to see what it was all about. And I was all of about 5'9", probably 160 pounds. And everybody else was about 6'3" and 210. It was like, okay, that's different. These are all men. But had a great time in training camp and enjoyed it. And was lucky enough to go the next year and make the team with, I didn't think I would make the team. They had a couple of guys. They had Stevie Amos there and Kevin Eastman, who had both played in the Western Hockey League. So I figured that I'd probably go back and play at home, but managed to hang around for a little bit and played a couple of years and probably played a lot more games than I thought I was going to.
Oh, that's awesome. Go ahead, Adam.
One question I had, Grant, was, you were drafted in the first round, 8th overall. What was the draft experience like? I mean, you see nowadays the kids, they're interviewing with every team in the league. They're, followed by cameras, if they're a highly touted first round pick or, talent wise like that. Like, what was it like back then when you got drafted?
We were clueless going into the draft. I mean, I was lucky enough, the agent I had at that time had dragged me, took myself and a couple of his other clients to Montreal for the draft, but we had no idea where we were going to be drafted or if we were going to be drafted. There was no interviews with other teams. I mean, yeah, if you met somebody, you'd say hi to one of the management from a team, but there was no interviews or anything else. So you had no idea what was going on. You were just hoping that you'd get drafted somewhere along the way.
And it's funny too. So you go from, I think it's amazing when you speak with somebody that's a Hall of Famer like this, you go from, it's your dream to play in the Hall of Fame to, 1 year, you're literally the runner up for the Hart Trophy and everything like that, is one of the league's best players. Could you possibly talk about, just how amazing that is? This is no slouch on you, but I think when people talk about players in the NHL, it's always Gretzky, Lemieux, Howe, or like, those are the four. How great of a season was that for you? And, I think you won the Vezina that year, right?
Okay. I believe so.
Why not?
Sure.
Hey, I played in a great era. You look at the two best players in the game at that time, Gretz and Mario. So if you slide in runner-up, that means you're somewhere in between those two. That's awfully good company. So, no, I mean, I think it was the first year I played over 70 games. So it was a fun year, and it was obviously the company's phenomenal. When you've got Gretz, Mess, Koff, Yari Curry, Glenn Anderson, when you've got that group of guys, we had fun every day. I mean, I wish kids' teams would have as much fun as we did. we like being at the rink. We like being together, and we love being on the ice. And that's what the game's all about. And that's what the game should be.
True that. Well said. And if you could speak to, you played your fair share of games at the old Boston Garden, and you even got to see some of the Fleet Center. Can you speak to the old Garden days and what that atmosphere was coming in there in usually enemy colors and just ready to do battle with the Boston Bruins? I got to ask you.
Oh no, I love the old Garden. I mean, I think that was the fun part is all the old original six buildings have tradition. And I love the tradition of it. And I love the buildings because they were always a little bit quirky. I mean, Boston Garden was a little bit smaller building. The corners were a little bit different. So it took a couple of years of getting used to it. I mean, I think when we came in the regular season, Boston usually beat us up pretty good. But at the same time, it was a fun building to be in because of the fans. The fans were right on top of you. They're boisterous. You walk through them to get to your dressing room. So with the Oilers, they treated us pretty good. With Buffalo, they probably weren't real happy when we wandered in there the one year and beat them in the first round. But at the same time, it was always fun because they were always respectful.
That's awesome. And that's exactly what I would have hoped the experience would have been, because it can be quite a ruckish place, as we all know. But
it's got some excitement to it. But you know what? The fans are knowledgeable. Yeah, they'll yell at you and be a little upset sometimes, but they're also very knowledgeable, and they're also very respectful when it comes to good play.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Now, you're talking about the old six buildings and everything. Was there, I think there was a poll a couple of years ago that the Edmonton Oilers have the best sheet of ice to play on, voted by the players. Was there a rink besides Edmonton that you really enjoyed going to?
I liked a lot of the old buildings. I mean, I love Boston Garden. I liked Chicago Stadium just because they were a little bit smaller, a little more compact. So it was different. Joe Louis Arena was a lot of fun in Detroit. And Maple Leaf Gardens was good. What else do we like? The old Montreal Forum had an atmosphere to it that was a lot of fun. I mean, you see 15 or 16 Stanley Cup banners hanging there. So that's always pretty cool. But no, I was a big fan of the older buildings. The old Met Center in Minnesota, that was always a good building to play in, a little bit different, but a fun building to play in. So I was a big fan of the old buildings.
What was one of your favorite rivalries from over the years? Because you got to experience a whole mess of them across your career, but which one stood out to you as one of the most intense?
Well, probably Calgary Edmonton was the most intense. I mean, growing up in Edmonton, you learn from a young age that all's well as long as you beat Calgary. So that one was intense as a kid, whether it was baseball, football, hockey, didn't matter. Some of the surprise ones, I mean, the Toronto-Boston rivalry was pretty interesting. The Buffalo-Boston rivalry, I didn't realize that was as good a rivalry as it was when I got to Buffalo. So there was a couple of surprises. St. Louis, Chicago, I mean, that one had some meanness to it too. So but those were good rivalries.
No doubt. And speaking of that, I mean, St. Louis for you, by the time you got there at that point in your career, to turn it on again with the elite level play that you did, I mean, did you do something different in that particular stint with St. Louis, or did the universe just come together and start clicking for you?
You know what? I think a lot of it was to prove a point. I mean, at that point, I'd left Buffalo, went to LA, and everybody's like, well, maybe he's done. Right? And that happens to every goalie, where they think possibly you're at the end of the string. And I wanted to prove a point that I can still play a little bit. And as an old guy at that point in time, I think I was 33, 34 going there. And didn't have a real good run my second year in Buffalo. Wasn't great in LA. So it was kind of out to prove a point a little bit. So it's amazing what you can do when you put your mind to it.
Now, go ahead, Clance. Sorry, buddy.
So just going back to the beginning of your career in Edmonton, being from Edmonton and playing in your hometown, did you feel any pressure playing for your hometown team? I know nowadays, guys, if from Boston, they get traded to Boston, they I don't want to say buckle under pressure, but they feel a little more pressure being the hometown guy, playing for the hometown Bees. Did you experience any of that playing for the Oilers?
I didn't really consider it pressure. I mean, one, is a privilege to play in front of family and friends. I think that was the biggest thing. And you look at it as a challenge. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're worried about it, then yeah, it's going to feel like you've got a monkey on your back. But at the same time, if you enjoy it and look at it as a challenge, I mean, yeah, guys can make a mistake and blend off into Neverland with everybody, but a hometown guy's not going to be able to slide off. You're accountable for everything. And I think that was the fun part of it, is you look at it as a challenge.
That's awesome.
And then I was going to go back to kind of some quotes from Gretzky. So Wayne has been pretty candid speaking about you and his relationship, stating, you know, numerous times that in his eyes, you're considered the greatest goalie he's ever seen. You know, how does that feel coming from somebody that literally his nickname's the Great One?
You know, obviously it's a fabulous compliment. I mean, I don't know if I'd put myself in that category. There's some pretty good ones before me. I mean, I was a huge fan of Terry Sawchuk. I mean, he had all the numbers that everybody wanted to attain. I mean, by the time I was done, Marty Brodeur, Patrick, I mean, there's been some great ones along the way. Jerry Cheever's another one. Because your guys are all Boston guys. He was a good friend of mine now, but fun to watch. And again, there's so many great goalies along the way that it's hard to lump yourself up around the top of that. I'm just happy to be in the same conversation with all those guys.
And then I guess my follow-up for that would be, you know, in your opinion, currently in the NHL, who do you consider to be, you know, the guy carrying the torch of being, you know, the number one goalie in the NHL?
I'd say the last 5 years or so, it's been Carey Price. I mean, he's taken some okay Montreal teams and made them good teams. And I think, is he going through a tough spell this year? Yeah, a little bit. But at the same time, I still think he's the elite guy in the league. But there's so many guys that are getting better and better. I mean, Vasilevsky in Tampa's good. I mean, Pecorine in Nashville, he's having a tough time right now, but he's an awfully talented guy. Right? Each team's got a guy that could be that elite guy.
That's awesome. I'm glad he didn't say Tuukka. We can cut that part out. I'm just glad he didn't say Tuukka right now. We probably would have lost like 30 subscribers if he had said Tuukka.
Oh man, we're riding the gauntlet here. It's a beautiful thing. So in that same regard, I mean, everyone's got a different opinion on who the best forward in the league is right now. Your opinion, same question. Who's got the hands right now, and who should the NHL be looking forward to as that next icon? We know Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin have been there. They've done that, but there's so much young talent in the league right now. Someone's definitely going to be taking that spot next, and it may or may not be Connor McDavid, but your take on that, Grant?
I would put Connor as the most dynamic player. How's that? But then you got to look at a guy like Austin Matthews. I mean, he's the real deal as well. Eichel's going to be good in Buffalo, but it hasn't turned out that way so far, but there's a lot of talent there. There's so many good young kids that the great news is that it's not going to be one or two guys. There could be 10 or 12 guys that are going to step up and be able to carry it for the National Hockey League. I mean, yeah, Alex and Sid are starting to gain in years a little bit, but the guys coming in behind them, I mean, Draisaitl, when you look at the different guys, they're going to be able to carry the NHL for probably another 10 years easily.
No doubt.
And I think to go on top of that, I think it's kind of amazing when you talk about this because they really are kids. You know, I'm in my 30s, and some of the stuff that these kids are doing coming into the league at 18 and 19 and handling all this pressure. I mean, for Austin Matthews to come in his first NHL game and do what he did, I think you just got to take a step back and realize what you're witnessing. And I think that there's just so much expectation on these players nowadays that if they don't score 4 goals every night, they're not doing their job. And I don't know if you kind of feel the same way, but it just seems these kids aren't really giving any chance to mature. It's no, you got to come in and play right now and make an impact.
Well, they've all come into franchises that were struggling at one point. So they instantly become the face of that franchise, and everybody's geared to what they're doing, how they're playing. So yeah, they don't really get a break, but at the same time, I don't look at it as goals and assists. I look at how do they make players around them better. And I think the stars of the league, that's what they do. They make the guys around them better. So all of a sudden you see Toronto's getting better. You see Edmonton's getting better. You look at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh got better with Sid. So you look at how he makes some better players around him. And I think that's what makes a star. It's not so much what you do yourself. What do the guys around you do?
Mm-hmm. And to build off that, I mean, you look at young players like an Austin Matthews, or even when Crosby came in the league, he was mentored, by Mario Lemieux. He lived with Mario for a few years, and if you look at Austin, he came into Toronto, didn't really have that, senior veteran to help guide him on what it's like to be a professional hockey player, especially at a young age. Now you look at them now and they got Joe Thornton in there. And I feel like Joe has kind of turned that team around and really has been a voice in that locker room and teaching Austin Matthews, Nylander, Marner, these young kids, the right path of what it takes to win in the NHL.
It teaches them to be good professionals. And I think that's the biggest thing is, you're there. The older you get, you're there as a security blanket for them, where if they're having an off night, they can talk to you. I mean, they see you having an off night, you're going to fight through it. You're going to battle through it. And if they see you doing it, your mid to late 30s, they have no choice. It forces them to be better and to battle through it. And I think that's the good thing of having veteran leadership. I mean, lots of teams have great young talent, but you have to have the veteran guys to go with that.
When Joe Thornton made his arrival into Toronto, in your opinion, how did that affect the locker room? Because we've seen the change on the ice level, but like you just said, bringing in a veteran presence like Jumbo, I mean, that's got to be huge for these young kids.
What is, because Joe's the ultimate professional. He knows what it takes. He doesn't get rattled. He just goes about his business as a professional. And it shows the young guys what a good professional does, how he prepares every day, how he works in practice every day. And it rubs off. I mean, the younger guys may have more talent, but they're still learning their work ethic. They're still learning to compete every day. And when you can see an older veteran do that, it can't help but make you a better team.
Yeah. And I mean, Joe's obviously an icon in the league and a great player. And he has been known to, be a voice in the locker room, and he holds, whether you're a 20-year veteran or a rookie, he's going to hold you accountable to your needs and your success to be the best professional you can.
And that's what it's about. I mean, his skill set's going downhill a little bit. That's what happens after 15 or 16 years. But his leadership isn't. His leadership's getting better and better. And you're there as a leader. It's not the offensive production you're going to have. It's not your penalty killing. It's what are you going to do for the young guys to make them better? And a guy like Joe makes them all better because he does make them accountable.
All right. Now I got to ask you to put your coach hat on for just a moment. When you're talking to young goalies nowadays and they're asking you, Mr. Fuhr, what can I do to bring my game to the next level? And you've only got one conversation with them, usually in passing, I would assume. What do you say to those young goaltenders out there who have that drive and that passion, but maybe just aren't sure what direction to take it in on ice? What would you say to them?
The first thing I tell them is to believe in themselves. I mean, a lot of times guys doubt themselves. That's usually why they're asking that question. So you tell them to believe in themselves. And then I'm still not really a big butterfly guy. I'm more the hybrid guy, where if you can stand up, stand up. If you can butterfly, great. It's a bonus. But if you can do both, you become a more rounded goalie.
That's awesome. And I guess leading into from that, this is going to be very difficultly worded, but looking at your style and how you played goalie, is there one skill set in today's goaltending that you wish that you could have taken to add to your repertoire and kind of learned when you were growing and becoming the goalie that you became?
I'd love to have the size. I might have been good if I was 6'4". But you know what? Goaltending's a lot about learning. I mean, all the years I played, my one goal was to add something new every year. So my first couple of years, I just relied on reaction because that's what I knew best. I didn't read the game very well, but I could react. And as I got older and played more, I started to be able to read the game a little bit better. I could read players better. I started to learn how to change the depth on shooters, where I could challenge one time, stay back the next time. But they always had to try and guess what you were going to do. So a lot of it's just learning the game itself and learning how to read, react. And you can create a little deception for shooters once you're comfortable with yourself. And every year you got to add something. That's the biggest thing.
That's awesome. And I think that maybe speaks, being a Bruins podcast, we kind of got to see that firsthand with somebody like a Dwayne Rollison, where Dwayne was one of the cast-offs. Anybody could have had him in the NHL, and Tampa was able to make a run with him. Was he as athletic as he was at the beginning? Probably not, but maybe that speaks volumes for these veteran players. You learn how to play the game,
Yeah. I mean, the optical illusion of being fast is if I read it, I move before you've actually thought about where you're going with it, because I can read what you're doing. All of a sudden I look faster than I actually am. So you create the optical illusion of you're that much faster than everybody else. And part of that is learning different depths of the game and reading players. And that was the biggest thing, probably my last 10 years, is you're learning to read the players. So they look like they're going to make a play. Once that head goes down, you react. You know they're going there. They know they're going there. You just happen to know it a half a second early. Or you can bait them to go there too. You give them a little bit of room on the glove side, a pretty good chance that that's where they're going. We used to like to do that with Cam. I mean, Cam Neely and I are good friends, but I would always bait him a little bit, give him some glove side, and I know he'd shoot there, and I'd be mad at me afterwards. So we had some fun with that.
That's awesome.
I mean, what was it like having Cam Neely just standing in front of your crease, just battling away? I mean, he is an absolute monster and was an animal on the ice.
Oh, we had a ball because Cam doesn't like you to talk to him. So if there'd be a pile up in front of the net and such, I could talk to him, say hi, ask him how things are going. And he hated that because he's the ultimate competitor where he's dead serious all the time. So of course you talk to him just because you knew it would bother him a little bit and have some fun with it. We enjoyed playing against each other.
Now, going off of that, then, in the NBA, it wasn't really well known besides NBA players during the time about Larry Bird being one of the best trash talkers. And now it's coming out over the years and everything. Is there somebody in the NHL that is he was the best trash talker, but not many people knew about it?
Most of the trash talkers in the NHL, people know.
Okay.
I mean, you got guys like Kenny Linsman, Kevin McClellan, Marty McSorley, guys like that. They're good trash talkers, but everybody knows they're good trash talkers. So it's kind of hard to hide in the NHL, especially right now with no fans.
Yep. All those microphones are really sensitive.
You hear the F-bombs get dropped left and right out there now.
It's actually kind of entertaining right now.
Yeah.
Who was it? The Trent Frederick and PK Subban one, where he told PK to go take more dancing lessons with his wife.
And he said, go post another workout video on Instagram.
Yes.
Oh yeah. There's lots of subtle little things that when there's fans, you miss. When there's no fans, you get to pick up on all the conversations that happen on the ice.
It's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing. First of all, if you are just joining us somehow in the middle of this, you are listening to the Causeway Kings, and we are being joined here by the legendary Grant Fuhr himself. And I just want to remind everybody, we are in partnership with the Black and Gold Productions LLC wing of Black and Gold Hockey. We're also sponsored by fuse-health.com for your top shelf CBD needs here in Boston and New England. Causeway Kings know what's best, and it's always approved. Use promo code CK15, get 15% off your next order. Speaking of which, I mean, Grant, and totally don't have to answer this if you don't want to. CBD, anything you've ever experimented with, or is that ever something that's come across the table?
I take it every morning. I'm old. I've replaced body parts. So yeah, hey, if I can get up in the morning and take something that makes me feel better, CBD works. So I'm a big fan.
Oh, that's awesome. We'll have to get you a sample out from our sponsor here. As I was just saying, fuse-health.com, Boston based. Tell me, what's your favorite? Do you like the edibles? Do you like the sprays, the topicals? What's your pick?
Sometimes I'll use topicals. Normally I'll take a couple of capsules in the morning. They not usually take probably about 50 milligrams, just better than taking Advil, Aleve, anything like that. So keeps the body semi-running.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that's an open and honest opinion. He is not being paid for this statement yet. The check's in the mail, Grant, I promise. No, thank you for your input on that. So folks, it's not the taboo that it used to be. CBD is there to help and in all its forms. So if you haven't tried it, check out fuse-health.com and give it a whirl. CK15, get you 15% off. And that's that. I promise. No more sponsorship. I promise. Oh, goodness. Now, Grant, you are a 6-time All-Star, and I just got to ask you, how much fun was that when you got the call? I assume it was a call, or someone told you, hey, you made the All-Star team. What was that excitement like the first time, and then subsequently the 5 times after?
You know what? The All-Star game is always fun. I mean, obviously, it's a great honor to be named an All-Star. So usually I had a lot of company from our team going with me, which was a lot of fun as well. But it's funny, All-Star games are notorious for having no checking. So we played a wide open style in Edmonton. So to go to an All-Star game, it was pretty much the same style we normally played, where everything was wide open. You didn't have to worry about a whole lot of checking going on in your own end. So I actually had a lot of fun with it. The bonus is you get to do it with all the best players in the league.
That's awesome. It really is. Now, when it comes down to facing the hardest slap shots, who always had the top shelf shot? Because you had the, I say fortunate, unfortunate task of facing down some of the biggest guns in the NHL.
Hardest shots. Al McInnes, obviously, probably had the hardest shot. Sneaky good was Reed Larson. He had a big, heavy shot. Ali Afraidy had a good shot. Big Z shoots it as hard as pretty much anybody. So,
did you actually have to take a couple of Big Z shots? Did you guys cross?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, when I was old, yeah, I get to try and track him down a couple of times.
Oh man, I can only imagine the feel on that first half. Just watching him pull the half cock, you're like, uh-oh, that can't be. That can't.
Let's just say you want to catch it, or you want it to hit you in the middle of padding.
No edges, no edges, no edges. I can only imagine. Now, we in the goaltender community nowadays, we're big on our windmill. Was that something that was on your list of priorities at all, or is that just some flashy stuff that we do nowadays?
You know what? I wanted to catch everything. I was taught at an early age that if you catch the puck, you control the puck. So to me, it didn't matter how I caught it, as long as I caught it. So that sometimes I'd reach across my body. Sometimes you windmill it, wave at it. As long as you caught it, that's all that mattered.
Now, one question I have is, I mean, obviously players always have their, pregame routines or their superstitions, and playing with goalies, they've kind of had some of the weirdest ones, I guess you would say. Any from your playing career or goalies you see nowadays? I mean, you see someone like it's Hellebuck in Winnipeg. He goes on the bench and he just goes back and forth with his eyes going on the ice. What were some of your superstitions and pregame routines that you had?
You know what? I'm the oddball. I didn't have any. I just went out and played. I think that was the biggest thing. I was always figured that the game's hard enough as it is. If you have to go through a superstition and such, somewhere along the way, travel gets interrupted, whatever gets interrupted, you can't go through your routine. Now you've added another element to what you have to think about. I'd rather just go to the rink, throw the gear on, and go out and play. Mm-hmm. And I just found it, the simpler I kept it, the better I played.
Now, is there a crazy superstition that you saw another player do that just completely baffled you?
Well, there's lots of guys that have strange things. I mean, that's the difference is some forwards have to walk out in a certain order. They've got to be able to come back and tap you in a certain order. So you just kind of stand there and let them go through their deal. And for me, it was just, okay, whatever works, we'll just play. Figure it out as we go.
What about Wayne? Did Wayne have any super pregame rituals or anything like that he would have to do?
You know what? Our team was pretty laid back. I mean, I know we always like to be the last guy to come by the net before we started. But other than that, our guys were pretty laid back. I mean, in our dressing room, we played table tennis right up until it was time to get dressed. So there wasn't a whole lot of superstition or I'd even call it seriousness till it was time. I mean, we enjoyed ourselves. Yeah, we played table tennis because one, you got a little sweat going, you got loose. At the same time, it helped you focus a little bit. So it was kind of our warm up before the game. So if you want to call it a superstition, that's about as close as we got.
So who played the best pong in the locker room then? Got to ask.
We might have got away with being one of the better ones. Yard Curry was good. Mess was good. So we had a few guys that could play a little bit.
Start getting the trick shots off the walls, and it's like, guys, hockey.
Yeah, we may have had the odd coach mention that. They should shut it down and get ready.
And I guess when you're talking about that locker room dynamic that you guys had in Edmonton, how great was it to have somebody like Gretzky, considered one of the greatest players, you, one of the goalies, all these players, but then to have Messier, who the NHL has now named a leadership award after, could you talk maybe about Messier and what he brought to the table?
Here's the greatest thing about our team. We had the two best leaders in hockey. Gretz led by example. Mess was our vocal leader. So you couldn't ask for two better leaders in the dressing room. I mean, yeah, if you weren't playing good, Mess would be in your face and let you know that you weren't playing good. Step it up a little bit. So we had the vocal side, and then we had the, here, just follow this. This is how it's going to work. So we literally had the best of everything.
I get chills just thinking about the fact that both of that, like, I don't know, that team was just stacked.
I mean, Mark Messier was my favorite player growing up, and he was just an absolute legend in my eyes.
Well, you have
Mess could do it all. Mess could score. He could run over you. He could play mean. He could also fight. So he had the full package, and you didn't know which side of that package you were going to get on any given night.
Makes for a very dangerous combination in a player, but also a heck of an ally.
Oh, no, it's definitely somebody you want on your team.
Now, one thing I'm curious about, Grant, is, you know, you see nowadays, like, players getting in fistfights at practice, like teammates fighting each other at practice. Did that ever happen back when you were playing?
Not so much. I mean, there'd be guys that would get into arguments, but nothing would ever really come of it. And yeah, there'd be some screaming and yelling sometimes. Guys don't like to be embarrassed in drills. And we played at a game speed. And with the talent that we had, there were some days you were going to get embarrassed. That's just the way it was. And some guys didn't like it, and they'd take offense to it. And there might be a slash here or there that would turn into an argument. But at the same time, you realize that they're forcing you to be better. So it was a lot about respect. But at the same time, guys don't want to be embarrassed.
So I got to ask, you've got 4 game series deciding victories in Stanley Cup finals, 5 actual rings though. Which one was your favorite?
I like them all. I mean, I think that's the fun part, is they're all different because it's all a different group of guys. Different things happen over the course of the year. So they're all special in their own way.
So do you just decide randomly which one you're going to wear every now and again, or is there anything that you keep real close personal to yourself like that? Like maybe
No, I usually keep 4 of them in a safety deposit box, and I'll keep one with me to wear. And when I'm up in Edmonton, I switch them out. So there's no one set one that I wear all the time.
Okay.
Understandable. I imagine that 84 one was probably one of the most special, just because it was the first one. I mean, not the ring itself, but the actual adventure, the whole situation, finding yourself in the Stanley Cup finals. I mean, early on too. It didn't take you long to crack the final record.
Well, the funny part was we'd lost the year before. In 83, we thought we had a good team, and we thought, okay, we got to the final. It should be easier than it was. The Islanders ran over us. I mean, we got swept in 4 games. So we knew that we had some learning and some growing to do. And the next year, when we won game 1, 1-0, that's when I think everybody had the confidence that the Islanders were beatable. And yeah, they blew us out in game 2, but the guys had confidence after that. And after that, it showed. I think we swept them in 3 after that. But at the same time, we knew, you could see, because everybody's confidence got better and better as it went.
And I think it's amazing too, because you guys, you know, so many times you hear nowadays that you have to lose to learn how to win. Do you think that that's kind of true, looking back at how you guys kind of bonded?
It is. I mean, it's part of learning how to win. I mean, yeah, we had a lot of success my first few years, but we didn't win in the playoffs. I mean, my first year, we had a great year and then got beat by LA in the playoffs when we had control of a series and let it get away. So that was kind of a slap in the face. The next year we played good. We got beat by the Islanders. So we'd have to have a couple of losses to say, hey, not good enough. We still have to be better. And that was part of the learning process, is each time you have to be better, better, better. After winning the first year in 84 and 85, we knew that year was going to be hard because everybody wants to beat the defending champion. So going into that year, we just knew it was going to be a harder year. And come playoff time, you knew you had to be better. So it's part of learning.
Well said. And to be a real student of life in the game, one has to always be willing to learn and improve. Like you said, each year adding something more, better and better and better and better. And that level of compete showed in your performance and in your teammates' performances as well. I mean, Of course, along that line, Boston was one of the unfortunate casualties along that train wreck. And it is what it is. It's all good. It's all good. We're just going to let it fly. No, you guys, it was a heck of a game. And I believe that was the same one where the power went out in one of them, right?
Yeah, we did have a little wrinkle with the power in Boston one night.
Were you on the ice for that?
I was.
Oh, man. Please,
I can honestly say Boston kind of got the short end of the stick of that one. Because when they canceled it, they came back to Edmonton to play that game over. So that was a big benefit for us.
I mean, that must have been crazy to just be in the middle of play and all of a sudden there goes the lights and the AC. Uh-oh.
I didn't even know they had AC in there. It was always hot and steamy.
I think they had some fans. They were just calling it AC, but it really wasn't. It was the vent was being guarded by the skeleton of the little circus monkey that got loose in the 30s still. So that was up there.
Yep.
But yeah, it was an interesting night when the lights went out, because I think we loitered around the rink for probably 3 or 4 hours before they finally called it. So
it took that long.
Yeah. And then they decided that, well, we're going to replay the game, but we'll play it back in Edmonton. And bonus for us.
Oh, man, I can only imagine the grounds crew losing their minds in the process.
I don't think the Bruins were very happy, but I mean, the good games we had in the Garden were all good games. I think that was the biggest thing, is it was a close battle when we were in the Garden. You got to our ice surface, a little bit bigger, a little more room for the guys to skate. It was a big advantage for us.
So Grant, you've done so much, and then obviously post your career, you wrote a book, you were featured in a documentary, you've had so many other things. Tell us about your book. That was written a few years ago at this point, but is it still available for folks to take a look at?
It might be sold out, but at the same time, it's around in certain places, old bookstores, that sort of thing. It's around. But yeah, we had fun doing that. I mean, I wrote it with the gentleman that was a reporter for Calgary at the time. So he ended up being my neighbor my last year when I played in Calgary. And it's fun to sit and go through things with somebody that worked for our biggest rival, to see how they thought of things, see how you saw things, and to put it all together in a book. So I enjoyed that process.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I'm so glad that it was such a positive experience for you overall. I mean, obviously there was the suspension in the 90s. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about that or not, but it seemed like you got the short end of the stick on that one for sure, just based on the reading that was available. But I'd love to hear your take on it.
You know what? I'm unfortunately a student of life. I wasn't a very good student in class. Sometimes you learn the hard way, and I made some mistakes and admitted to it, and definitely got a little longer suspension than I thought I was going to get. But at the same time, you got to pay for the mistakes you make. So the best thing I did out of the whole thing was, one, it made me a better person, and two, learn to move on from it, where, yeah, I can help kids along the way now, saying, you know what, if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. You can actually still accomplish good things afterwards. You just have to believe in yourself and trust in yourself.
That's right. That's right. And I was reading an article, an interview you gave years and years ago, but it was basically touching on the point of, I mean, it was something that you had done years prior, and it was like 4, 5, 6 years later that all of a sudden the NHL wanted to make a big deal about it. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, I paid penance for something I'd done a couple of years previous. So that was the frustrating part of it. But at the same time, I get it. And it was taboo at that time. So they didn't have a policy. They didn't have anything for that. And that was kind of the issue. So yeah, they made an example of me, and fine, so be it. After that came a drug policy. So in that sense, it's helped other players in the National Hockey League. And you know what? If it helps, then it's worth the trouble that I went through.
And that's so amazing of you personally as an individual and your humanity. It speaks to where you can basically take that punishment like that, like you said, for, penance for what it was. But the fact that that rule and that policy change following what happened to you, no one else will have to deal or suffer that same way. So at least something good came of it. And it's just huge of you, in my opinion, that you can take something like that and just be like, you know what, there it is. It happened. We're moving on, and we're going to help others move on. I don't think there's a lot of other individuals that would have taken it the same way.
Well, I'm pretty sure I didn't take it that way the first 6 months afterwards, but You know what? Sometimes you sit and you reassess where life's at, and you look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, you got to be a better person. So for me, it was a wake-up call, but it was also a time for me to reassess myself and decide that you have to actually like yourself. And I think that was the biggest thing.
Now, when you're talking about looking back and everything, again, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but is there any NHL team that you almost signed with that, you know, maybe looking back, it would have been fun to play with that city?
You know what? I get to play in all good cities, so I can't really complain about anywhere I was.
Okay.
I mean, I would love to have played my whole career in Edmonton, but unfortunately things didn't work out that way. And as a little kid growing up, the Maple Leafs were on every Saturday night because we had hockey night in Canada. So to go to Toronto, if I couldn't be in Edmonton, Toronto was the next best thing. So I walked into a good situation there. From there, I get shipped to Buffalo. Well, John Muckler was running the show there. So knowing Muck, it was an easy transition to go to Buffalo. I leave Buffalo to go to LA. There's 8 guys I played with in Edmonton in LA already. So comfortable there. St. Louis decided they wanted to sign me as a free agent. And that actually worked out really well. And then coming back my last year to Alberta, I played in Calgary. My mom was from Calgary. So to wrap up a career, all the cities I were in were great fits for me.
Now, did you ever get a phone call from the Boston Bruins about potentially signing there?
I did not.
Oh.
Would have been a fun building to play in, though.
Travesty.
Yeah, sounds about right for the Bruins management.
Cam would have loved it.
Yes.
Now, I mean, you obviously had a tremendous career. When did you know it was time to retire and hang them up?
I knew my last year. I mean, I'd had my knee reconstructed. I played 73 games on it. And then every summer I had to have it cleaned out and have surgery on it. So I think after about the 6th surgery, playing my last year, I spent more time in the trainer's room than I did on the ice. So yeah, could I have squeezed out one more year? I probably could have. Was I going to get better? No. So why take somebody's spot when you know that you can't play to a level that you want to play at? So I knew it was time for me to say that's enough.
Again, that's just huge of you as a professional, as an athlete, and as someone who had a storied career, to have the presence of mind to say, you know what, time for the young kids to have a turn. You know, so.
But you know what? It's a lot easier when your body's giving up the ghost. I mean, I know a lot of guys that have retired that are healthy when they retire, and they regret retiring because it's hard to retire if your mind still thinks you can play. I mean, mind-wise, I probably still could have played. Body-wise, I knew it was done. So for me, it was probably a lot easier.
Right.
Go
ahead, Jake.
I'm sorry. Oh, I was just going to say, and when you look at that, you know, your first year out of retirement, was it one of those things where you hear these stories of these athletes that the first year is usually the toughest just because it's something you've done for, you know, so many years?
You know what? I was lucky. Calgary offered me a job helping the goalies there at that time. So I went from retirement right into coaching goalies. So I still got to go to the rink every day. I still got to be on the ice. So for me, it was a good transition.
That's awesome. All right. And then I think Benny, do you want to ask him the last question about the foundation? And that is kind of probably it, right?
I mean, we still have plenty of conversation to go, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, while we're on that, Grant, let's talk about that, the Grant Fuhr Foundation and your work with the Betty Ford Center. And we talked a little bit about it on the People's Truth on WATD 95.9 FM. But just bring us back around. You've been able to help a lot more folks than I think a lot of people even thought that they'd be able to see anybody else helps. You've just done amazing work. Tell us a bit about, more about that.
Well, my wife and I usually, well, in a normal year, probably travel 140 to 150 days a year to different charity events to help different charities, support different charities, see if we could raise as much money as possible. And we got to thinking that we travel so much to do it, so why not do something here at home? So we happen to live here in Palm Springs, and we thought about, well, why don't we start a foundation? And the first year we'll put a golf tournament together, and we tried to figure out a good charity to support. So we come up with the Betty Ford Center, approached them to see if they'd have any interest in it. I mean, I went through there in the late 80s, so I've got a little bit of a connection to it. And I think it's a phenomenal charity support. So we decided to have a golf tournament here in April. Well, it was supposed to be last April, but COVID kind of bumped us along about 3 times. So my foundation's going to have a tournament this year, and hopefully we'll raise a bunch of money for the Betty Ford Foundation. And that's kind of what we do now, is try and support as many charities as possible.
That's wonderful. And, we'll have to talk off air about this, but we're also holding a veterans 100-hole golf tournament in Hyannis down Cape Cod in, I believe it's late August this year. So we'd love to be able to work something out. And if not that one, a future event, have you come down. We'll all hit the links on a Causeway Kings joint venture with the Grant Fuhr Foundation. I think that'd be a huge thing for everybody around here in the East Coast.
I'd love to. Hyannis is beautiful. I haven't been there in a bunch of years, but last time I was there, it was fabulous.
Now, Grant, are you an avid golfer? Are you on the course 2-3 times a week?
Define avid.
Do you play more than once a week?
Let's just say in a good week, I'll play 5 days. So yes, jealous. You could say I'm an avid golfer.
I'm so jealous.
But COVID was good last year. I think I played 225 rounds.
Oh,
Not
wow.
bad. Not bad at all.
Does that count as avid?
Chigs, that's like talking to the bakers right there.
Oh, I know. I think I play once a year because I lose so many balls. I need to go get more money every year. So.
I usually play in season anytime from 1 to 3 times a week.
Okay.
I'm in sales, so I use it.
If I'm busy, I play 3 days a week. If I'm not busy, then I'll 5, maybe 6, depending on how much I get away with.
Now, what's your handicap?
I still play to scratch.
Wow.
Good for an old guy.
I would love that. I'm a 12.
That's awesome. The only thing I know how to do is make a fool out of myself. So if anyone's looking for a gesture along the way, let me know. I got you covered.
I'm with you, Benny.
All right. Well, Grant, is there anything we haven't touched on that you'd like the people listening at home to know? We also have a lot of our youth players that listen, and just advice for life in general to anyone. And we talked about a lot of things here today, but I just want to make sure you have that open forum to anything you have on your mind.
You know what? For the young kids, enjoy the game. I mean, I think it gets lost that sometimes the game gets taken too seriously. Go out and enjoy it. Right? That's the beauty of it. Let the kids be kids. Let them have some fun. Let them enjoy it. They'll advance a lot further in the game doing it that way.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Gentlemen, any final thoughts or questions?
No, I mean, Grant, this has been fantastic. If we could, we actually got some Causeway Kings t-shirts being made and hats made up. We'd love to send you some.
Awesome. That'd be great.
No,
if you're ever in the Cape, I'd love to play around and golf with you.
We're going to schedule it.
I like that idea of 100 holes. I might see if we can fit that one in.
Well, yeah, and it's a par 3 course, full 18. The owner, Fred LaSalva, a good personal friend of mine. It's a beautiful walking course, honestly. And I mean, they do have carts available, but it's just the way it's set up. Twin Brooks down in Hyannis. It's just wonderful. So we'd love to have you as our personal guest, and hopefully we can work out some details, get you down here.
That'd be cool. I would enjoy it.
I don't walk though, Ben. I need a cart.
Yeah.
All right. Carts all around.
And I just wanted to say, thank you very much, Grant, for taking the time. Like, this really does mean a lot to us three with what we're trying to do for a lot of the youth in the area. So, thank you very much.
That's my pleasure.
Wonderful. And we'll look to have you on another program in the future and have you back. You're always a welcomed friend here as a Hall of Fame goaltender and as a general friend here of the Causeway Kings.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
You as well,
Thank
Grant.
you, Grant.
Thank you so much.
Always
all
a
right.
pleasure.
Take care, guys.
You too.
Thank you, Grant. You're listening to the Causeway Kings here on the Black and Gold Podcast Network in partnership with Black and Gold Productions, LLC. Folks, have a great night. And he's already gone. I was hoping we'd catch him for another minute, but he signed off.
No, and I wasn't trying to be rude by doing that. I just figured, okay, we got him for an hour for free. And we literally, that was probably a good 55 minutes straight of just question and 2 paragraphs. That was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Bro, yeah.
In my opinion, I think we got way more questions in than the Chicklets get in. I don't know. I feel like we were just like boom, boom, boom.
You know what it was too is I think like we did a great job going off the questions we had, but I think we also like kind of added in stuff as we went on, which made it even more conversational with them.
Yeah, no doubt. It's all about that human approach. And like I said, you're a welcome friend here on Causeway Kings anytime, to personalize it like that. And we're going to send him a nice follow-up thank you. And Clance, I love your suggestion of sending him a t-shirt or something.
So I'll do this. Like I said, I'm going to pick up the shirts and hats tomorrow. I'll reach out to Matt at Fuse Health. We'll put like a little sample pack together for him.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that was great. Oh my God. I forgot all about that already. That was great. He tied
I'm thinking, so Ben, if you can, whoever your contact was to him to get him on here, if you can get
his wife directly.
Okay, then if you can reach out to his wife, get their address, I'll get Matt to send me a sample package. And when I pick up the hats and the shirts tomorrow, I'll send him a hat and a shirt.
Oh, that's awesome. That's super cool.
That was just, I mean, I was starstruck, to be honest with you. I mean, a 5-time Hall.
How much did we charge for that sponsorship? Triple it.
Yeah.
Dude, seriously. I mean, that's huge. We just had Grant Fuhr endorse our sponsor on the spot.
Oh,
I thought it was kind of ballsy to ask him if he'd ever dabbled in CBD. He was like, "Fuck yeah!"
Imagine if he was like, "Well, you talk about the legal kind or the illegal kind?"
That would have been great. Don't forget, he's like 50, 60 something years old at this point.
I think he's like 62 years old.
Yeah, I mean that was huge.
That was just that was unbelievable. I mean,